The security line at O'Hare stretched endlessly before me, a sea of tired travelers shuffling forward in a collective daze. I was supposed to be in Seattle for another full day, but the conference had wrapped early, and all I wanted was to surprise Nathan with my unexpected return. 16 years of marriage, and I still got butterflies at the thought of seeing him. My phone vibrated with a text from my sister Vivian. "You land yet? Still need me to pick you up? Got an earlier flight? Already here. Taking an Uber. Thanks, though," I replied, inching forward with my carry-on. The thought of Nathan's face when I walked through our door made me smile. He'd been distant lately, preoccupied, working late, his mind elsewhere. Nothing alarming, just the natural ebbs and flows of a long marriage. This surprise homecoming was exactly what we needed. I cleared security and followed the signs toward the main terminal, my rolling suitcase clicking rhythmically against the polished floor. The usual airport chaos unfolded around me. Tearful reunions, business people charging toward connecting flights, exhausted families corralling children, and that's when I saw him. Nathan stood by the American Airlines arrival gate, dressed in his favorite charcoal suit, the one that still made my heart skip after all these years. But he wasn't looking for me. He didn't know I was here. In his hands was a bouquet of stargazer lilies, pink and white with dark speckles. My favorite, except they weren't for me. I froze, my hand tightening around the handle of my suitcase. A woman emerged from the gate, her honey blonde hair cascading over her shoulders. She was younger than me, maybe early 30s, wearing a fitted blazer and wide-legged pants. Professional. Beautiful. When she spotted Nathan, her face transformed, breaking into a smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. She moved toward him with purpose, her carry-on abandoned behind her as she picked up pace, and then she jumped into his arms. Nathan caught her effortlessly, the flowers crushed between them as he spun her around, their laughter rising above the terminal din. He set her down gently, cupping her face in his hands with such tenderness that I felt physically ill. My husband kissed her, not a friendly peck. Not a collegial greeting. He kissed her like he once kissed me, like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. The world tilted beneath my feet. I stumbled backward, colliding with a family behind me. "Sorry," I mumbled, but my voice sounded foreign, like it belonged to someone else. I ducked behind a pillar, my heart hammering against my ribs. This couldn't be happening. Not Nathan. Not us. Through the crowd, I watched them walking toward the exit. His arm around her shoulders, her head tilted toward him. Intimate. Familiar. They'd done this before. I felt myself fracturing, splitting into two women. One was collapsing, crumbling under the weight of 16 years of memories suddenly tainted. The other was calculating, cold, observing with clinical detachment. It was the second woman who lifted her phone and captured several photos of them together. It was she who followed at a safe distance, watching them get into his car, our car, in the short-term parking lot. It was she who got into an Uber and gave the driver an address. "Home, please," I said, my voice steady despite the hurricane raging inside me. Home. Where I would be waiting when Nathan returned from wherever he was taking her. 16 years compressed into flashes of memory during that Uber ride. Nathan and I meeting at a mutual friend's graduation party, him spilling red wine on my white dress, then giving me his jacket to cover the stain. Our first apartment with the leaking faucet and the neighbor who played saxophone at 2 a.m. The miscarriage in year 3 that nearly broke us. The quiet strength he showed when my father died. The way he still brought me coffee every morning, prepared exactly as I liked it. The signs had been there, hadn't they? The late nights at the architectural firm. The weekends suddenly filled with client meetings. The new cologne. The password changed on his phone, but I'd trusted him completely. After all we'd been through, I never thought, "You okay back there?" The Uber driver's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. I realized I was crying, silent tears streaming down my face. "Just allergies," I lied, wiping my cheeks. "Long flight. He nodded, unconvinced, and turned up the radio. A mercy. Our house looked exactly as I'd left it 5 days ago. The blue hydrangeas I'd planted last spring blooming along the walkway. The brass door knocker that had come from Nathan's grandparents' house in Michigan. The porch swing where we'd spent countless evenings watching thunderstorms roll in over Lake Michigan. I paid the driver and wheeled my suitcase up the familiar path. Inside, I stood motionless in our entryway, looking at our life through new eyes. The framed photos on the wall, our wedding day, hiking in Colorado, parasailing in Mexico, felt like artifacts from a museum exhibit, the life we thought we had. I checked my watch. If they'd gone to lunch or to her place, I had maybe 2 hours before Nathan returned. 2 hours to decide what kind of woman I would be when he walked through that door. The first thing I did was pour a glass of the expensive Cabernet we'd been saving for our anniversary next month. The second was to call Vivian. "You're home early," she answered cheerfully. "Viv," I said, my voice finally breaking, "I need you." To her credit, my sister asked no questions, just said, 20 minutes, and hung up. While I waited, I moved mechanically through the house, looking for... What, evidence? I already had all the evidence I needed, captured on my phone. But something drove me upstairs to our bedroom, to his closet, to the locked drawer in his desk where he kept important documents. The key was hidden where it always was, in the hollow base of his desk lamp. Inside the drawer, passport, birth certificate, the deed to the house, and a small velvet box I'd never seen before. My hands trembled as I opened it. A platinum bracelet with a small infinity symbol charm. Not my style at all. The gift receipt was still there, dated 2 weeks ago. The doorbell rang, startling me. I shoved the box back into the drawer, locked it, and hurried downstairs. Vivian took one look at my face and pulled me into her arms. "What happened?" she asked, leading me to the couch. I showed her the photos on my phone. The blood drained from her face. "Oh, Diana," she whispered. "Are you sure it's what it looks like?" He kissed her, Viv. Really kissed her. And the way she looked at him? I swallowed hard. They're not just colleagues. Do you know who she is? I shook my head. Young. Beautiful. That's all I know. Vivian's expression hardened. She'd never fully warmed to Nathan, had always maintained that protective older sister wariness, even after 16 years. "What do you want to do?" she asked, taking my hands in hers. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to be gone when he gets home. Part of me wants to confront him. Part of me wants to pretend I never saw anything and just keep our life. That last part? That's fear talking," Vivian said firmly. "You deserve better than lies, Di." 16 years, Viv. My voice cracked. That's more than a third of my life. All the more reason not to waste another day with someone who doesn't value it. I sipped my wine, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. I need to hear what he has to say. I need to understand how we got here. Vivian looked skeptical but nodded. "Do you want me to stay?" "No," I decided. "This needs to be between me and Nathan. I'm getting a hotel room nearby," she said, her tone brooking no argument. "You call me anytime, day or night, and I'm here in 10 minutes. Promise?" "Promise," I said, hugging her tightly. After Vivian left, I wandered through our home, touching familiar objects. The carved wooden elephant from our trip to Thailand. The quilt his mother had made for our wedding. The ridiculous ceramic rooster he'd insisted on buying at a flea market because it made me laugh. Each item held a memory, each memory now called into question. Had it all been a lie? Or had we simply drifted so far apart that he'd found comfort elsewhere? I showered, washing away the stale airplane air and tears, then dressed in the navy blue dress he always said brought out my eyes. I applied makeup carefully, covering the evidence of my breakdown. If this was the end, I would face it with dignity. Then I sat in our living room with a glass of wine and waited for my husband to come home. I heard his key in the lock at 4:17 p.m. "Diana?" Nathan's voice held surprise but not panic. He didn't know that I knew. "You're home early!" He came into the living room, briefcase in hand, looking exactly like the man I'd married, just older. more distinguished with touches of silver at his temples. Nothing in his expression betrayed that he'd been in another woman's arms hours earlier. "Conference ended early," I said evenly. "I thought I'd surprise you." His smile seemed genuine as he leaned down to kiss me. I turned my face slightly, so his lips grazed my cheek instead of my mouth. If he noticed, he didn't show it. "How was your flight?" he asked, loosening his tie and sitting across from me. "Enlightening," I replied, watching him carefully. He raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "I saw you at the airport, Nathan." The color drained from his face so quickly I thought he might faint. His hand froze on his tie. "What?" he whispered. "I saw you at O'Hare this morning. With her. The flowers were a nice touch. Stargazers, my favorite." "Diana, I can explain." "Can you?" I interrupted, surprising myself with my calm. "Can you really explain why my husband of 16 years was kissing another woman in the middle of O'Hare?" "Because I'd love to hear it." He closed his eyes briefly, his shoulders sagging. When he looked at me again, there was resignation in his gaze. "Her name is Elise," he said quietly. "I don't care what her name is," I snapped, my composure cracking. "I want to know how long." Nathan ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I'd always found endearing. Now it made me want to scream. 8 months, he admitted. The timeline hit me like a physical blow. 8 months. While we were planning our trip to Belize, while we were hosting Thanksgiving, while he was holding me through my mother's cancer scare. "She's from the London office," he continued, words tumbling out now. "We met at the Global Partners Retreat last year. It wasn't supposed to. I never meant for it to what? To continue? To hurt me? To destroy our marriage?" My voice rose with each question. "Any of it," he said, looking genuinely tormented. "Diana, I love you. I've always loved you." "Don't," I warned, standing abruptly. "Don't you dare say you love me right after admitting to an 8-month affair." Nathan stood too, reaching for me. I stepped back. "It's complicated," he said. "No, it's actually incredibly simple," I countered. "You made vows to me. You broke them. Repeatedly, for 8 months. We've been drifting apart for years," he argued. "You know it as well as I do. We barely talk anymore. We're like roommates. So talk to me," I shouted. "Suggest counseling. Take me on a date. Don't jump into bed with the first young thing from the London office who shows interest." His expression hardened. It wasn't like that. Elise and I connect intellectually, creatively. She understands my work in a way that you never— "Oh, spare me the 'she understands me' cliché," I interrupted. "How original. The middle-aged architect and the young protégé. I'm sure you're the first man in history to fall for that narrative." "You're not being fair," Nathan said, his voice tight. "Fair?" I laughed bitterly. Was it fair to carry on this relationship behind my back? Was it fair to let me believe in our marriage while you were building a relationship with someone else? He had no answer for that. "Where is she now?" I asked. Nathan looked away. "I dropped her at a hotel downtown." "How considerate of you." My sarcasm was razor sharp. "What was the plan, Nathan? Sneak off to see her while I was supposed to be in Seattle for another day? Then what? Back to our regularly scheduled programming until the next opportunity arose?" "I don't know," he admitted, sinking back into his chair. "I haven't been thinking clearly. When I'm with her, I feel— Don't you dare tell me how she makes you feel," I warned. "I'm not interested in the details of your infatuation." We stared at each other across the living room, the room where we'd opened wedding gifts, where we'd danced to old records during power outages, where he'd held me through my grief when my father died. "What do you want, Diana?" Nathan finally asked, his voice quiet. "Do you want me to end it with her?" The question hung in the air between us. It should have been an easy answer. Of course I wanted him to end it. Of course I wanted to save 16 years of marriage. But something had broken inside me at that airport, something that couldn't be mended with promises and apologies. I said carefully, "to understand how the man who once held my hair while I vomited through morning sickness for a baby we lost could become someone I don't recognize." Pain flickered across his face at the mention of our lost child. "People change," he said. Softly. No, I countered. People grow. They evolve. They don't become liars unless they choose to. I moved to the window, looking out at our garden, the roses I'd planted, the bird bath he'd installed because I loved watching cardinals in winter. She's pregnant, Nathan said behind me. The words hit me with physical force. I gripped the windowsill to steady myself, grateful my back was to him so he couldn't see my face crumple. 16 years of trying for a child after our loss. Fertility treatments, discussions of adoption, and now this woman, this Elise, carried what I had longed for. What we had longed for together. Or so I thought. How far along? I managed to ask, still facing the window. 12 weeks, he answered. We just found out for certain. She flew back to tell me in person. I closed my eyes, remembering the joy on his face when he'd spun her around in the airport. It hadn't just been love or lust, it had been elation. Fatherhood. Finally within his grasp. Were you ever going to tell me? I asked. Or were you planning to leave a note one day while I was at work? I didn't know how, Nathan admitted. I kept waiting for the right moment. I turned to face him, my grief crystallizing into something harder. There is no right moment to tell your wife you're having a child with another woman. Diana, stop saying my name like that, I snapped. Like you're the victim here. Nathan stood and approached me cautiously. I never meant to hurt you. And yet here we are. What do you want me to do? He asked again. I looked at him, really looked at him. The lines around his eyes that hadn't been there when we met. The slight softening of his jaw. The familiar way he stood with his weight shifted to one side. This man had been my world for 16 years, and now he was having a baby with someone else. I want you to leave, I said finally. I can't look at you right now without seeing her in your arms. Where will I go? I don't care, I replied honestly. To her, to a hotel. Just not here. Not tonight, Nathan nodded slowly. I'll pack a bag. One more thing, I said as he turned toward the stairs. Does anyone else know? Your family? Our friends? He hesitated. My brother knows. I needed to talk to someone. His brother Marcus had never liked me. The knowledge that he'd been privy to Nathan's affair, that they'd discussed it while I remained oblivious, was another betrayal. Of course, I said bitterly. Always confide in Marcus. Nathan disappeared upstairs. I heard him moving around in our bedroom, opening and closing drawers. The mundane sounds of my marriage ending. When he returned with a duffel bag, he stopped in front of me. Diana, I am sorry. Truly. I know that doesn't fix anything. But I am. I looked into the eyes of the man I'd built my life around. Sorry you did it or sorry I found out? He had no answer. After he left, I sat alone in our house, my house now, I supposed, and tried to imagine a life I hadn't planned for. A life without Nathan. A life where the man I loved was raising a child with another woman while started over at 42? The bracelet in the drawer upstairs taunted me. An infinity symbol for a relationship built on lies. I poured another glass of wine and called my sister. 3 days later, I stood outside the Drake Hotel in downtown Chicago, my heart pounding against my ribs. Nathan had moved most of his clothes out while I was at work, leaving his key on the kitchen counter alongside a note I'd torn to pieces without reading. Through a mutual friend, I'd learned that Elise was staying here until she returned to London next week. Nathan was helping her look at properties, which I assumed meant they were planning her eventual relocation. I knew confronting her was probably unwise. Vivian had certainly thought so when I'd told her my plan. She's not the one who broke vows to you, she'd reminded me. Nathan is the villain here, but I needed to see her, to see them together with clear eyes. Not through the shock and haze of that moment at the airport, but as the reality my life had become. I'd dressed carefully in a black sheath dress and heels, my armor for the conversation ahead. My wedding and engagement rings were conspicuously absent, locked away in my jewelry box at home. The hotel lobby was elegant and bustling. I spotted them immediately, sitting in the lounge area by the windows overlooking the lake. Nathan was leaning toward her, speaking animatedly about something while she nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. Her hand rested protectively over her still flat stomach, a gesture I recognized from my own brief. Doomed pregnancy years ago. I approached their table with measured steps, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Nathan saw me first, his expression shifting from surprise to alarm. "Diana," he said, half rising. "What are you doing here?" Elise turned, her eyes widening slightly as she registered who I must be. Up close, she was even lovelier than I'd realized at the airport. Clear blue eyes, flawless skin, and an elegance that made me feel suddenly aware of every one of my 42 years. "Hello, Nathan," I said calmly, then turned to Elise. "You must be Elise. I'm Diana, Nathan's wife." To her credit, she didn't flinch. "I know who you are," she said in a crisp British accent. "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Are you?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Sorry, Nathan stepped between us. "Diana, this isn't the place." "Where is the place, Nathan?" "Our home. The home where you haven't slept for the past 3 nights because you're here, planning a future with your pregnant mistress?" Several heads turned in our direction. Nathan's jaw tightened. "Please sit down," he said quietly. "People are staring." "Let them," I replied. But I took the empty chair at their table nonetheless. No need to create more of a scene than necessary. Elise met my gaze steadily. "I understand you're angry. You don't understand anything about me," I cut her off. "You don't know me. You don't know our marriage. You don't know what you've helped destroy." "I didn't set out to fall in love with a married man," she said. "And yet here we are." I echoed my words to Nathan from days before. "Tell me, when did you discover he was married? Before or after you slept with him?" Nathan made a strangled noise. "Diana, stop!" "No, I want to know," I insisted. "Did he tell you about me right away? Did he mention we've been together for 16 years? Did he show you pictures of our house, our vacations, our life?" Elise glanced at Nathan, then back to me. "He told me about you on the first night we met," she admitted. "He wears a wedding ring." "He wasn't hiding you. Just betraying me," I said flatly. "I never meant to come between—" "And yet here we are," I said for the 3rd time. Nathan ran a hand through his hair. "Diana, what do you want from this conversation?" "Clarity," I said simply. "I want to understand how 2 seemingly intelligent professional people could behave with such breathtaking selfishness." Elise flushed. "That's not fair. Life isn't fair," I replied. "I thought I'd be celebrating my 17th anniversary next month. Instead, I'm sitting across from the woman carrying my husband's child." A heavy silence fell over the table. Around us, the hotel continued its normal afternoon rhythm, oblivious to our private drama. "The pregnancy wasn't planned," Elise finally said, her hand again moving protectively to her abdomen. "But we've decided to embrace it." "How convenient for you both," I said, my voice tight. "Nathan and I tried for years after our miscarriage." "Did he tell you about that, Elise? Did he tell you how he held me while I cried myself to sleep for months afterward? Did he mention the fertility treatments that failed? The adoption agencies that rejected us because we were too old?" Nathan's face had gone pale. "Diana, please." "No, I want to know what she knows about our life," I insisted. "About the life you're throwing away." Elise looked genuinely uncomfortable now. "I know enough to understand it hasn't been perfect," I laughed harshly. "Perfect? No marriage is perfect. But ours was real. It was built on 16 years of shared history, of inside jokes and accumulated kindnesses and weathered storms." "What do you have? 8 months of hotel rooms and stolen weekends?" "That's not fair," Nathan interjected. "What Elise and I have is real too. Real enough for you to leave everything behind? Real enough to start a new family at 45? I challenged him. "Or are you planning to shuttle between Chicago and London, playing happy family with both of us?" "I'm moving to London," Nathan said quietly. The words landed like a physical blow, though I'd suspected as much. "When?" I managed to ask. "After the divorce is final," he replied. My firm has a position open in the London office. It's actually a promotion. Congratulations, I said bitterly. Everything's working out perfectly for you, isn't it? Nathan reached across the table, but I pulled my hand away before he could touch me. Diana, I know this is painful, he said. But sometimes relationships run their course. We've been unhappy for years. I wasn't unhappy, I countered. Comfortable, maybe. Settled. But not unhappy. Then you weren't paying attention, he said gently. The truth of his words stung more than any accusation. Had I missed the signs? Had I been so secure in our marriage that I'd failed to notice his growing discontent? I should go, Elise said suddenly, gathering her purse. You two clearly have things to discuss. No, I said, surprising myself. Stay. This involves you too. I want to understand what happens now. She hesitated, then settled back in her chair, exchanging a glance with Nathan. I've spoken to a lawyer, Nathan said. He's drawing up papers. We can make this as amicable as possible. The house is yours, of course. I'll continue to support— I don't want your support, I interrupted. I want my life back. The one where my husband didn't father a child with another woman. Can your lawyer arrange that? Nathan looked pained. Diana, stop saying my name like that, I snapped. Like I'm a child you need to placate. What do you want me to say? He asked, frustration evident in his voice. That I'm sorry, I am. That I made a mistake, I did. But Elise is pregnant, and regardless of how it happened, I'm going to be a father. I can't change that. I wouldn't want to. The last sentence hung in the air between us. I studied his face, the face I'd woken up to for 16 years, and saw something I hadn't noticed before. Anticipation. Beneath the guilt and conflict, Nathan was excited about this baby. About his new life. I turned to Elise. Do you love him? She seemed startled by the direct question. Yes, I do. Enough to build a life with him? To raise a child with him? To forgive him if he does to you what he's done to me? Nathan made a noise of protest, but Elise held up a hand to silence him. I can't predict the future, she said carefully. But yes, I love him enough to try, and I am truly sorry for the pain this has caused you. I nodded slowly, something shifting inside me. The clarity I'd come seeking was materializing, though not in the way I'd expected. Nathan, I said, turning back to my husband. I want a divorce. Not an amicable one with polite negotiations through lawyers. I want everything you've ever given me sold or donated. I want nothing that reminds me of you. He looked stricken. Diana, don't be hasty. I'm not being hasty, I cut him off. I'm being decisive. Something I should have been years ago, apparently, while you were growing so unhappy that you sought comfort elsewhere. I stood, smoothing my dress. I'll be staying with Vivian until I find a place of my own. The house is yours to sell. I don't want it anymore. Diana, please, Nathan began, but I held up a hand. I deserve better than this, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. I deserve better than a man who could look me in the eye for 8 months while building a life with someone else. I turned to Elise. I hope he's different with you. I hope fatherhood brings him joy. But remember this moment if he ever starts staying late at the office too often or changing his phone password. Her eyes widened slightly. But she said nothing. With that, I turned and walked away, my head high despite the tears threatening to fall. I made it all the way to the taxi stand before the first sob escaped. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of orange and pink. Behind me, the sounds of laughter and conversation drifted through the open doors, my housewarming party in full swing. The divorce had been finalized last month. Nathan had indeed moved to London with Elise, who was now in her 3rd trimester. Our house, their house, had sold quickly, and though Nathan had insisted I take half the proceeds, I donated my share to a fertility clinic that helped couples who couldn't afford treatments. My new place was smaller, but mine in every way. Modern furniture in bold colors, abstract art on the walls, no trace of the life I'd shared with Nathan. There you are, Vivian said, joining me on the balcony with 2 glasses of champagne. Hiding from your own party? I smiled, accepting the glass. Just taking a moment? You've earned it. she said, clinking her glass against mine. You're officially a free woman with a fabulous new home and an even more fabulous new job. The job had been unexpected, creative, director at a boutique marketing firm specializing in architectural and design clients. My years of supporting Nathan's career had given me insights and connections in that world that proved valuable in ways I hadn't anticipated. To new beginnings, I said, raising my glass. To happiness, Vivian countered. You're glowing, Di. It suits you. Inside, someone put on music, a jazzy piece that filled the apartment. Through the glass doors, I could see my new friends and old ones mingling, colleagues from work, neighbors from my building, Vivian's husband chatting with my new assistant. And in the corner, partially hidden by a potted palm, stood Reed Sullivan, a landscape architect I'd met through work 2 months ago. He caught my eye through the glass and smiled, raising his beer bottle in a small salute. He's still here, Vivian observed, following my gaze. That's promising. I felt my cheeks warm. We're just colleagues. Colleagues don't look at each other like that, she teased. And colleagues don't stay until the end of parties. Reed and I had been circling each other professionally for weeks, our conversations gradually extending beyond work to personal interests, philosophies, dreams. Last week, he'd asked me to dinner. I'd said yes. It's too soon, I protested weakly. It's been 6 months since you found out, and almost a year since your marriage was really over, Vivian pointed out. Besides, no one's saying marry the guy. Just enjoy his company. I sipped my champagne, watching the last sliver of sun disappear below the horizon. What if I make the same mistake? What if I miss the signs again? You won't, Vivian said confidently. You're different now, stronger, more awake. She was right. The pain of Nathan's betrayal had transformed me. I'd moved through grief to anger to a strange kind of gratitude, grateful to have discovered the truth, grateful for the chance to rediscover myself. Come back inside, Vivian urged. It's your party? In a minute, I promised. After she left, I took a deep breath of the cool evening air. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Nathan. Elise had the baby. A girl, 7 Labisa 2 O's. Both doing well. I stared at the message, waiting for the pain to come. Instead, I felt a curious detachment, as if reading about distant acquaintances. Congratulations, I replied simply. Another message followed quickly. I'm sorry for how everything happened. Diana, I hope you're doing well. I thought about Nathan in a London hospital, holding his newborn daughter, Elise tired but radiant beside him. A new family forming from the ashes of mine. I am doing well, I typed. Better than I could have imagined. It wasn't meant to be cruel, just honest. 6 months ago, I couldn't have pictured this moment, standing in my own space, surrounded by new possibilities, feeling whole. I slipped my phone back into my pocket without waiting for his response. Whatever Nathan and I had to say to each other had been said months ago in that hotel lounge. Inside, Reed looked up as I re-entered, his expression warming. He made his way toward me through the crowd. I was starting to think you'd escaped your own party, he said, his voice carrying the slight remnants of a Boston accent. Just getting some air, I replied. Thanks for staying so late. I was hoping to help with cleanup, he admitted. It seemed like a good excuse to spend a little more time with you. His directness was refreshing after months of lawyers and careful negotiations. No hidden agendas, just honest interest. I'd like that, I said. Later, after the last guests had gone, except for Reed and Vivian, who was curled up on my new sofa pretending not to watch us, we washed dishes side by side in my kitchen. So, Reed said, drying a wine glass carefully, are we still on for dinner Tuesday? Actually, I said, making a decision, why don't we make it tomorrow? Sunday brunch instead of Tuesday dinner. His smile lit up his entire face. I know just the place. Best Eggs Benedict in Chicago. It's a date, I said, realizing I meant it. When Reed finally left, with a kiss on my cheek that lingered just long enough to suggest he wanted more but respected my pace, Vivian gave me a knowing look. What? I asked, collapsing beside her on the sofa. Nothing, she said innocently. Just nice to see my sister happy again. I am happy, I realized aloud. Not despite everything that happened, but because of it. The Diana who had stood frozen in O'Hare Airport 6 months ago, watching her husband embrace another woman, could never have imagined this moment. She had believed her world was ending. Instead, it had been beginning. Outside my window, the Chicago skyline glittered against the night sky. A view I'd never have had from the suburban house I'd shared with Nathan. New lights, new perspectives, new possibilities stretching before me like the vast expanse of Lake Michigan. I was early, but this time it wasn't a return, it was a departure.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.